I moved into the Fair Lake Ridge subdivision 7 years ago, after my divorce. Two-bedroom ranch, small yard, decent school district for when my daughter visits in the summer. It was quiet, predictable. HOA meetings once a month in the community center, speed bumps every 2 blocks, and a welcome committee that dropped off banana bread the first day you moved in. For the first 2 years, I didn't attend meetings. I paid my dues, kept my lawn edged, and waved politely at Carol from Lot 9 when she walked her golden retriever past my porch every morning. I didn't mind the rules: no boats in driveways, no colored Christmas lights, no satellite dishes mounted on roofs. They kept the neighborhood looking clean. Boring, maybe, but clean. It wasn't until Frank died that I stepped up. Frank was the treasurer before me, retired accountant, used to walk the block in those tan orthopedic shoes with a clipboard tucked under one arm like he was still auditing someone. He passed in his sleep. Heart failure. No drama, no mess, just gone. At the next HOA meeting, Carol looked up from her clipboard and said, "We'll need someone to finish out Frank's term." I don't know what made me raise my hand. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was the way everyone else avoided eye contact. By the following month, I had the spreadsheets. The Fair Lake Ridge Homeowners Association wasn't exactly the IRS, but it did have its share of quirks. We collected $85 a month per household, just over 120 homes in the subdivision. That added up to more than $100,000 a year in HOA fees, give or take late payments and move-outs. Most of it went toward landscaping contracts, sidewalk maintenance, insurance, and seasonal events. There was a line item for community improvement, which technically covered anything from new benches in the dog park to the 4th of July fireworks. It was that line item that got us into trouble, or more specifically, got me into trouble. Because sometime last spring, a few of the board members got it into their heads that we needed a private pool. Not a kiddie pool, not a little splash pad. A full-size, in-ground, gated, code-compliant swimming pool with a concrete deck, a shade pavilion, bathrooms, and a keycard entry system. The proposal came from Gavin Miles, vice president of the HOA, owner of 4 jet skis, none of which are technically allowed in his driveway, but somehow always are. Tall guy, always in golf polos, drives a black Escalade with tinted windows, even though his commute is 8 minutes and he works remote. One of those guys who says, "Let's circle back," during casual conversations. He presented it like a PowerPoint, even though we didn't have a projector. Just handed out stapled packets with a mock-up on the front page and started tossing around buzzwords like property value increase and community cohesion. "We've got the space," he said, pointing at a shaded corner of the park near the retention pond. "We've got the funds. And come on, who wouldn't want a pool?" Carol nodded. So did Lenny, the secretary, who mostly just typed and nodded at everything. Everyone turned to me. "I mean, I'd love a pool," I said, flipping through the packet. "But this isn't in the budget." Gavin smiled like I'd just proven his point. "That's what the Community Improvement Fund is for." "It's not that big. You're talking about a 6-figure project. This estimate here says $185,000. We have reserve funds. Not that much. And we'd have to raise dues to cover maintenance. Lifeguards, insurance, cleaning, security." Gavin chuckled like I was being cute. "It's just money, Kevin." And that's when I realized he wasn't asking. He was telling. I didn't make a scene at that meeting. I just told them I'd run the numbers and get back with a full projection. Gavin clapped me on the back like I was a good sport. Carol handed me a banana muffin on the way out. But that night, I went home and started digging. The cost breakdown in Gavin's packet was optimistic at best. The contractor he referenced had no online reviews and no verifiable address. The mock-up looked AI-generated. Clean, suspiciously so. I cross-checked similar neighborhood pool builds in surrounding counties and came up with a rough average, about $240,000 for a pool that size with amenities. Add another 40 grand a year to maintain. And Gavin wanted to break ground this summer. I sent an email to the board, included everything: cost projections, maintenance estimates, permit timelines, even an insurance rider example showing the potential increase to our premiums. The next day, Gavin responded with a single line: "Appreciate the feedback. We'll discuss at the next meeting." He didn't mention the part where we'd go bankrupt in 18 months. Things got weird after that. At first, it was small stuff. My landscaping invoice didn't get reimbursed, even though I submitted it through the proper channel. Then I noticed my HOA gate card stopped working. Carol told me it must have been a system glitch. I had to buzz in 3 times that week. At the grocery store, Lenny avoided eye contact, literally turned down the frozen foods aisle like I was holding a clipboard. One night I got home from work and found a flyer shoved in my mailbox. Glossy print, unmarked, no return address, just a headline: "New leadership equals new vision for Fair Lake Ridge." Inside, it laid out bold initiatives like the community pool, improved dog park drainage, and monthly neighborhood socials. It didn't mention me by name, but it was clear. There was a quote from a concerned resident who said, "We need someone who sees opportunity, not obstacles." It didn't take a genius. 2 weeks later, the vote was called. HOA bylaws allowed for a special vote of confidence with 10% of homeowner petition signatures. Gavin somehow had 30. He handed them to Carol like he was dropping off a birthday card. Smiling, always smiling. The special meeting was set for the following Saturday, open to all residents. No need for debate, just ballots and boxes. I didn't campaign, didn't go door to door like Gavin did. I figured the numbers spoke for themselves. We had a good reserve, low dues, and 0 debt. I thought being responsible mattered, but people like promises. People like pools. That Saturday, the community center was packed. Folding chairs lined up in uneven rows, kids slumped against their parents, couples whispering over ballots. Gavin stood near the coffee urn, shaking hands like it was a mayoral race. Carol cleared her throat. "Okay, folks, one item on today's agenda." She explained the vote, kept it clinical. Then she held up the box and asked people to drop in their slips. I sat in the back, holding mine. It felt stupid, honestly. Like I was back in high school running for class treasurer again. Only this time, there were mortgages involved, HOA fees, legal responsibilities, and all of it could be undone by a guy with a custom Yeti cooler and a vision board. I waited until most people had left before I walked up to the table. Carol didn't look at me. I peeled the tape off the box and started unfolding the ballots one by one. "Do you have to do that here?" she asked softly. I didn't answer. I just kept reading. Yes, 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 yes. Not all of them, but enough. When I finished, I reached for the manila folder with the HOA checkbooks. The rule was immediate transfer of financial access upon vote of removal. Carol hesitated before sliding it toward me. Her eyes were damp. "We'll keep you on the landscaping committee if you want," she whispered. I took the folder, nodded once, and left. Back at home, I turned off my phone. I sat on the porch with a glass of water, watching a couple of kids ride scooters down the sidewalk. The sprinklers clicked on across the street. A dog barked 2 houses down. Nothing felt different, and yet everything did. Because I knew what would happen next. And I had one advantage Gavin hadn't thought of. He might have won the vote. But he hadn't looked at the books yet. Not the real ones. The ones I kept offline. It rained the day after the vote. Not a heavy storm. Just that slow, steady kind of rain that makes everything smell like wet concrete and grass clippings. The kind that keeps the neighborhood quiet. No lawnmowers, no joggers, just the occasional thud of a waterlogged newspaper landing on a porch. I watched it from my front window, holding coffee I never got around to drinking. The HOA email came through around 9 a.m. Effective immediately, Kevin Hale is no longer serving as HOA treasurer. All financial inquiries should be directed to Vice President Gavin Miles until a new treasurer is formally appointed at next month's meeting. I closed the laptop without replying. They hadn't even waited 24 hours. Most people in the neighborhood probably thought I'd go quietly. I'm not a loud guy. Not the type to stir things up. I fix things for a living, commercial HVAC. I read manuals. I follow schematics. If something stops working, I figure out why, swap out the part, and move on. But when something smells off, I don't ignore it. And something about this whole pool push, Gavin, the votes, the contractor nobody could verify, smelled off. They thought ousting me would clear the way. They forgot I still had everything from my term backed up, including what I wasn't supposed to have. 3 months earlier, I'd found something strange in the HOA vendor payments ledger. A line item from the Community Projects account, $4,000 to G&M Holdings, LLC. No address, no invoice attached, just a PayPal transaction ID. It caught my eye because it wasn't categorized. Carol usually flagged payments without proper documentation, but this one had sailed through. I brought it up casually at a board meeting. Carol blinked. G&M Holdings? I don't think that's in our approved vendor list. Gavin chimed in quickly. It's just a placeholder. Pre-project consulting, nothing binding. I asked for a receipt. He said he'd get it to me. He never did. So I made a note, printed the ledger, saved a copy on a thumb drive I kept in the back of my tool drawer, just in case. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with that thumb drive plugged into my laptop, I started retracing every community project's expense from the past year. Most of it checked out. Mulch for the park, LED lighting upgrades, repairs to the pavilion roof. Nothing exciting, nothing suspicious. Until I hit a new charge. $6,250. May 18th, G&M Holdings, LLC. Again, no documentation. And this time, it was logged the week after Gavin first mentioned the pool. I cross-checked that transaction ID with PayPal's public tool. The recipient's business email domain matched gavinmiles.co. I sat back in my chair. He didn't even bother hiding it. I thought about reporting it to the county board, to the state HOA compliance division. But I knew how that would go. Gavin would claim it was an honest mistake, a mislabel. Maybe even say it was a personal deposit he accidentally routed through the HOA account. He'd stall, promise transparency, run out the clock until a new treasurer came in and rubber stamped the project. I needed something that couldn't be ignored, so I started making phone calls. First, the bank. As treasurer, I had been added as a secondary account holder with view-only permissions. That access hadn't been revoked yet. I logged in and downloaded the past 6 months of transactions, matched each one against our meeting minutes, found 3 more payments to G&M Holdings totaling nearly $20,000. Next, I called the contractor Gavin claimed was handling the pool project. I'd done this before, never got a call back. This time I used my work line, posed as a commercial client looking to bid a job. A man answered. He sounded half asleep. "This is Matt," he grunted. "Hey, Matt. Just checking if you guys do HOA pool builds. Got a subdivision out in Fair Lake Ridge." Silence. Then, "Where?" "Fair Lake Ridge. You gave a quote a few weeks back. Gavin Miles." He exhaled like he'd been holding it in. "Look, man, I don't know what that guy told you, but we never signed anything. He wanted a fake estimate, said it was just for show. I said no. He sent me a Venmo for the consultation anyway." "Do you have that message?" A pause. Then, "Yeah, why?" I gave him my email. He sent the screenshots 10 minutes later. The messages were clear. "Just need something to show the board, make it look legit. Doesn't have to be accurate. No one's going to dig too deep. Here's $500 for the mock-up." It was sent from Gavin's personal number. I saved everything, PDF'd it, backed it up to cloud and drive. But I still wasn't sure what my move should be. Legal action? Risky. I didn't have a lawyer, and filing against the HOA would mean suing my neighbors. Public exposure? Maybe. But if I just went nuclear, it would look petty, like I was bitter about being voted out. I needed something quieter. So I called Donna. Donna Jarvis lives 3 streets over from me. Retired paralegal, former HOA secretary before Lenny took over. One of the sharpest, most stubborn women I've ever met. Used to run the HOA audit committee before it mysteriously dissolved 2 years ago when Gavin started consolidating influence. I brought banana bread, told her I wanted to talk. She narrowed her eyes, but waved me in. We sat at her kitchen table while her cat licked crumbs from the placemats. I laid everything out: ledgers, email printouts, the texts from the contractor. Donna didn't say a word until I was done. Then she leaned back and said, "He's laundering HOA funds through a shell company, and no one caught it?" "They caught it," I said. "They just didn't care." Her eyes narrowed. "Well," she said, "maybe it's time we make them care." Donna still had her old audit committee bylaws saved. She pulled out a binder from the hall closet and blew off the dust. According to the original charter, the audit committee could be reinstated with just 5 homeowner signatures. It didn't need board approval. All it needed was awareness. She offered to help me get the word out. Not through flyers, not through door knocking, but through documentation. We printed the ledger excerpts, highlighted the payments, listed out the discrepancies, added the screenshots. Then she added one more thing: a copy of the HOA bylaws with the section on financial malfeasance marked in yellow. Title: What You're Paying For, and What You're Not Being Told. She stapled them into packets and handed me a stack. "Drop these in mailboxes," she said. "All of them." So I did. Every house, every porch, even Gavin's. The next board meeting was the biggest turnout I'd ever seen. People stood in the back, fanned themselves with their flyers, whispered in tight circles. The usual sleepy affair had turned into a minor uproar. Gavin looked rattled. Carol looked pale. Lenny looked like he wanted to disappear. When the meeting started, Carol tried to open with the agenda, but she didn't get 2 sentences in before someone stood up and said, "Are you going to address the flyer?" Then another, "Where's the money, Gavin?" And another, "I want to reinstate the audit committee." Now. I sat in the back, said nothing. Donna stood. "My name is Donna Jarvis. I'm a resident. I've lived here 14 years. And under Article 7, Section C, I am submitting 5 homeowner signatures to reinstate the audit committee effective immediately." She handed the paper to Carol. Carol didn't move. Donna added, "And if this board refuses, I'll be forwarding this entire packet to the County Fraud Division tomorrow morning, with my name on it." Silence. Then Carol took the paper and nodded. Later that night, I got a knock on my door. It was Gavin. He didn't look smug this time. No golf shirt, no cologne, just a windbreaker and jeans, and a look like someone had popped the fantasy bubble around his head. "I didn't know you'd go that far," he said. I didn't invite him in. "Didn't know I'd go that far either," I said. He looked around like someone might be listening. Then he leaned in. "What do you want?" I held up the folder of documents. "I want the truth on the record. I want every penny tracked. And I want you out." He looked like he might protest. Then he didn't. "Fine," he muttered. "You win." But I wasn't done. Because I knew something he didn't. He wasn't the only one who'd gotten too comfortable. You learn a lot about people when their money's on the line. It's not about greed most of the time. Not really. It's about control. About who gets to say yes, who gets to say no, and who gets to pretend the rules don't apply because everyone's too polite to call them out. And for the better part of a year, Gavin had been that guy. He wasn't the only one. After that meeting, after Donna reinstated the audit committee and half the neighborhood realized their dues had been quietly bleeding into a ghost account, there was a weird lull. The kind of awkward calm where people don't know if they should be angry or embarrassed. So they just nod a little too quickly when they see you on the street and keep their mouths shut. The audit committee officially reformed with 5 people: Donna, me, Teresa from Lot 31, CPA, Ruben from Lot 11, former real estate lawyer, and Camilla from Lot 6, quiet, methodical, ran spreadsheets like a machine. We didn't make noise. We requested access. We backed everything up. The moment we logged into the HOA bookkeeping software, it was like opening a drawer that hadn't been cleaned in years. Misfiled transactions, rounded numbers where itemized receipts were required, duplicate payments to the same LLC with slight date shuffles, just enough to avoid suspicion from anyone not looking. We traced over $28,000 that had been quietly funneled to Gavin's G&M Holdings account over a 6-month period. We found another $9,300 routed to a consulting firm that turned out to be Gavin's college roommate in Orlando. And we found 2 checks that had been cut directly to Lenny. No invoice, no meeting minutes, just retainer for services. I brought that one to Carol. She closed the door behind me, sat on her floral couch, and didn't speak for almost a full minute. Then she said, "I didn't know." I believed her. Sort of. Carol had always been the kind of person who ran things with warm cookies and Post-it notes. She liked community newsletters, bake sales, and neighborhood character. She wasn't corrupt, not in the cartoon villain sense, but she was passive. And Gavin had filled the vacuum with confidence and shiny mock-ups. When the audit findings came out, Carol tried to get ahead of it. She called a special session, asked Gavin to step down voluntarily to preserve trust. He refused. So she made it a public vote. It was a strange thing to witness. A man who once strolled into meetings like he was hosting a TED Talk, now fumbling to hold on to a title that came with 0 pay and too much responsibility. Gavin printed flyers again, promised to fight for Fair Lake Ridge's future, said we were stonewalling progress, and that the pool plan was unfairly targeted. But this time, people weren't buying it, not after seeing line item scans, not after we circulated a copy of the HOA balance sheet showing the reserve fund had dropped 42% in 9 months. When the vote finally came down, it wasn't close, 87-23. Gavin was out. He left the meeting early. Didn't even take his leftover donuts. I thought that would be the end. But it never is it? Because the moment you start pulling one thread, you find out just how tangled the whole sweater really is. See, after Gavin was removed, Carol asked me, publicly, to return as treasurer. I said no. Not because I didn't care, but because something didn't add up. 1 week after Gavin's removal, we got an anonymous email. No name, no address, sent through a burner account. The subject line said, "Missing insurance escrow?" Attached were screenshots. Internal HOA software logs showing a withdrawal from the insurance escrow account, $11,000. The name on the approval? Carol Jensen. It was dated 4 months earlier. Donna and I looked at each other and didn't speak for a full minute. Then she said, "Pull the logs." We cross-referenced the timestamp with the ledger entries. The transaction didn't exist in the public-facing books, only in the back-end approval history. And the account that authorized the withdrawal had administrator privileges, Carol's login. We confronted her 2 days later. I didn't want to believe it. I liked Carol. She reminded me of my mom in some ways, organized, a little controlling, but always with good intentions. She cried when we showed her the logs, said she needed the money to bridge a loan, said she planned to repay it before anyone noticed. It wasn't malicious, she insisted, just desperate. Her husband had been out of work for months. Their second mortgage ballooned. They were facing foreclosure, so she borrowed it, and then Gavin found out. That's when the pieces locked together. Gavin didn't need to blackmail her. He just offered to look the other way. In exchange, she rubber-stamped his projects, approved his LLC disbursements, shielded him when we asked too many questions. They weren't working together exactly. They were both using the HOA for different ends, and both needed each other's silence. When Gavin got ousted, Carol knew she was next. She resigned the following week. No speech, no final bake sale, just a handwritten note taped to the community center door. I didn't feel angry, just tired. After all that, the board held emergency elections. We brought in new members, people who weren't friends of Gavin, people who knew how to read a spreadsheet. Camilla stepped in as treasurer. Donna became interim president. I stayed on the audit committee. The first thing we did was freeze all spending over $500 without a full board vote. The second thing we did was hire an external CPA to review the past 2 years of finances. The CPA's report came back with a summary that read, "There is strong evidence of consistent financial mismanagement and possible criminal misuse of funds under multiple former board members. Recommend legal counsel be consulted." We sent the file to the county and waited. That was 2 months ago. Since then, things have quieted. No new pool proposals, no anonymous flyers, just normal HOA business, fence permits, dog poop complaints, holiday decor guidelines. People started waving again. Kids played on the sidewalk without dodging golf carts. We even reinstated the 4th of July cookout, this time with itemized receipts and a spending cap. But I still feel it sometimes. That hum under the surface, the way people look at each other now, not quite with suspicion, but not with the same easy trust either. And maybe that's the cost of pulling back the curtain. Maybe it's better to live in a boring neighborhood with too many rules and not enough surprises. Because once you know how the sausage is made, you can't unsee the hands in the grinder. Still, I don't regret it. Not any of it. Even when I catch myself wondering what would have happened if I just signed off on that pool proposal, kept my head down, let Gavin build his fantasy, let the budget bleed until someone else had to clean it up. But that's not who I am. Never has been. Even when it would have been easier. Even when the whole damn neighborhood voted me out. It's funny how silence can change shape. In the beginning, when people didn't know what was going on, the silence was tense, like everyone was waiting for someone else to speak first. Now it was the kind of silence that says, "We've seen too much to pretend we haven't." After the audit committee findings and Carol's quiet resignation, the neighborhood's trust in the board was paper thin. Not just because of what Gavin and Carol had done, but because of how easy it had been. How no one, not even me, had seen the full scope until it was too late. But I wasn't naive enough to think that exposure alone fixed anything. We had documentation. We had replacements in place. But we still didn't have what really mattered: accountability. And that meant going beyond the HOA. Donna was the one who made the first call. She didn't bother going through the local HOA liaison. She called the county auditor's office directly. "Someone needs to look at this," she said. "We've got a private homeowner association with a $200,000 annual budget that's been misappropriating funds for over a year." They didn't exactly jump at the chance. "We don't regulate HOAs, the clerk told her. "You'd need to talk to an attorney or file a civil suit." But Donna didn't hang up. She kept pressing, asking for supervisors, documenting every phone call. Finally, someone connected her with the Municipal Fraud Division, who agreed to review the report. I'll give them this much: they moved fast once the right pair of eyes landed on it. 2 weeks later, a county investigator showed up at the community center during a scheduled board meeting. Not undercover, not subtle. She wore a navy windbreaker with a badge on her hip and introduced herself as Renee Santiago, fraud examiner, county oversight. She asked to speak to the current treasurer, Camilla, the former president, Carol, and me. Camilla looked like she might throw up. I told her it was okay. I'd sit in too. Renee didn't pull any punches. I've reviewed your audit documents, the payment history, and the bylaws, she said, flipping through her folder. You've got embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, and wire fraud, at a minimum. And that's if none of it touches federal lines. Camilla asked, what happens now? Renee looked up. Depends how cooperative everyone is. The investigation put a freeze on all non-essential HOA spending. It also triggered a subpoena of past board members' financial statements, including Gavin's, Carol's, and Lenny's. That's when the real fallout began. We learned Gavin had used HOA funds to pay off personal credit card debt, disguised as contractor fees. Carol's loan was in default. She hadn't paid back a cent of the $11,000 she withdrew. And Lenny? He'd been taking checks labeled as website redesign consulting. Except the HOA hadn't changed its website in over 2 years. 3 different people. 3 different crimes. And yet they'd all managed to keep each other afloat just long enough to bury the evidence, until someone said no to a pool. The county pressed charges. No jail time, at least not yet. But all 3 were served with civil suits for restitution. Gavin's assets were frozen. His Escalade got repossessed within days. Carol sold her house quietly and moved to live with her sister in Tallahassee. Lenny never even showed up to his own deposition. He sent a lawyer. The board hasn't heard from him since. None of them showed up at the next HOA election. And still, the strangest part wasn't the crimes. It was how quickly the neighborhood wanted to forget. Within a month of the charges, people started acting like it had all been a bad dream. Someone brought donuts to the next HOA meeting. They put up fall decorations. Kids ran through the cul-de-sac with Halloween costumes again, like nothing had happened. People smiled a little too wide when they saw Donna at the grocery store. Thank you for cleaning things up, they'd say before looking over their shoulders. And me, I kept my head down. Until the morning I found the proposal. It was left on my porch in a plastic sleeve. No note, no name. Inside was a document labeled Phase 1, Community Wellness Center Proposal. Attached were renderings, budget forecasts, even a drafted contractor agreement, and at the bottom, a single signature, Lenny McAdams, dated 2 months before the pool proposal. I called Camilla. She met me on the porch, still in her scrubs from a night shift. What the hell is this? I asked. She flipped through the pages slowly, face hardening. It means they were planning it for longer than we thought. Not just a pool. No, she said. A whole network of projects. The pool was just the beginning. The wellness center was a cover for a permanent tax shelter. Build it using HOA funds, lease it to a fake nonprofit, reroute the lease payments back through a holding company. It was clever, almost impressive, in a disgusting kind of way. And it was never meant to be seen by anyone but the original board. We'd only scratched the surface. By December, the new HOA board voted to partner with a forensic accounting firm. They combed through 5 years of records. They found $12,400 in undocumented cash withdrawals through ATM, cards tied to the HOA account, a duplicate maintenance contract being paid to an LLC linked to Gavin's brother-in-law, a third-party landscaping firm that had billed the HOA for services never rendered, discovered when Reuben walked the property line and counted trees that had never been trimmed. By the time the firm finished its report, they'd documented $71,600 in probable fraudulent expenditures. We handed it all to the county. Renee didn't even flinch when she picked it up. This happens more than you think, she said. It's October now, almost a year since they voted me out. The irony isn't lost on me. If I just kept quiet, If I'd approved the pool, none of this would have come to light. I'd still be treasurer. Gavin would still be planning barbecues and ribbon cuttings. Carol would still be president, passing around banana muffins while rerouting HOA funds through silent withdrawals. And Lenny? He'd probably be filing new contracts with invisible consultants. All because nobody wanted to ask the obvious question: where is the money actually going? I don't know what's next for Fair Lake Ridge. People are quieter now. Meetings are more thorough. Proposals come with documentation. Camilla added a rule. Any project over $1,000 requires third-party auditing before approval. Donna stepped down, finally. She said she wanted to go back to being just a nosy neighbor with a clipboard and a cat. Ruben took over as president. As for me, I still mow my lawn every Saturday, still wave at Carol's old house, now rented out to a young couple with twin toddlers. Still make my coffee and watch the rain when it comes. But there's a manila envelope in my desk drawer now. Inside it is everything I kept. Not for revenge, not for leverage, but for the next person who gets a flyer promising a bold vision for Fair Lake Ridge. Because someone will. They always do. When I think about how it all started, it wasn't about justice. Not really. It was about a pool. A stupid, glitzy community pool proposal that didn't make financial sense. On paper or in reality. Something that looked good in flyers. Something people could imagine themselves using, even if they probably never would. But the truth is, the pool was never the real problem. It was just the crack in the wall. And once you start looking through that crack, you see the whole foundation's been rotting for years. The forensic audit concluded in mid-November. The final report was almost 60 pages, with charts and line item breakdowns and summaries of suspect transactions. By the time it was done, the number had ballooned. $92,850.23. That was the official amount the HOA had lost to misappropriation, fraudulent vendors, and unapproved expenditures. The County Fraud Division submitted charges to the state attorney's office. What followed wasn't a headline-grabbing raid. It wasn't a Netflix docudrama. It was slow. It was procedural. It was real. Carol was given 3 years of probation and ordered to repay the full $11,000 she'd withdrawn from the insurance escrow account. She avoided a criminal record by accepting a pretrial diversion and writing a formal apology that the board read aloud at the January meeting. Gavin wasn't as lucky. He faced 4 counts of felony-level financial fraud, including creating and profiting from a shell company using HOA funds. His plea deal included 1 year of house arrest, 5 years probation, and $45,000 in restitution, garnished directly from his freelance consulting business, if you could call it that. Lenny was harder to pin. The county couldn't prove direct embezzlement in court, but they did tie him to fraudulent billing. He lost his professional certifications and quietly declared bankruptcy. None of them ever set foot in a board meeting again. By spring, Fair Lake Ridge had changed. Not in some sweeping, dramatic way, but in the details. People started showing up to board meetings who'd never come before. Young couples, retirees, tenants who used to think the HOA was just for owners. The board added 2 new rules. All contracts must go through a public bidding process. No board member can approve any transaction over $1,000 without 2 co-signatures. We posted financial statements online monthly. Camilla introduced an open Q&A period during meetings. Ruben brought in a CPA twice a year for financial reviews. And me? I didn't return as treasurer, didn't even run. I stayed on the audit committee, but more as a guardrail than a driver. The truth is, I was tired. Tired of chasing shadows. Tired of reading budgets like crime scenes. Tired of being the guy who always had to say no. One Saturday in April, during the neighborhood cleanup event, A woman I'd never met walked up to me with a rake in her hand. She lived in Lot 44, just moved in a month ago. Said her name was Priya, tech consultant, 2 kids, divorced. She looked at the garden beds I was mulching and said, "I heard you're the reason this place didn't fall apart." I laughed, said I was just the guy who got voted out of his volunteer job. She smiled. "No offense," she said, "but I'm glad you were." Then she handed me a lemonade and went back to pulling weeds. That night I sat on my porch with the manila envelope in my lap. Same one I'd kept all this time. Inside were copies of every document, every transaction, every email and screenshot that helped expose what had happened. I could have burned it. I almost did. But instead, I slid it into a fireproof safe in the back of my closet. Not because I expected trouble, but because people forget. And sometimes, the only thing that keeps places like this from slipping back into that kind of rot is a simple, boring paper trail. A few weeks later, a new flyer circulated. This time it wasn't from Gavin or Lenny or anyone with a bold vision. It was a survey, asking residents what they wanted to see next year. The top answer wasn't a pool, wasn't a wellness center. It was accountability, followed closely by better street lighting and more native plants in the park. Not glamorous, not flashy, just real. So yeah, they voted me out because I wouldn't approve their private pool. And for a while, I felt humiliated. Like maybe I'd made too big a deal out of nothing. Like maybe I was the guy who killed the fun. But it wasn't about the pool. It never was. It was about not being the kind of neighbor who lets people lie because it's easier than asking hard questions. And if I had to go through it again, I'd still vote no. Every damn time. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.